I used to believe betrayal always happened behind closed doors. A secret phone, a hidden message, a second woman. I never imagined my own husband would be the one to make the betrayal impossible to ignore. And worse, that he would be standing right there when it happened. My name is Daisy, and for years, I thought I understood my marriage. Anthony and I had been together long enough to know each other's habits, moods, and silences. From the outside, we looked comfortable, stable, happy. But there was a difference between being comfortable with someone and feeling loved by them. I had started noticing that difference long before that unforgettable night. Anthony worked constantly. Even when he was home, his mind seemed somewhere else. Dinner was usually quiet. Conversations became shorter. Affection became something we remembered rather than something we shared. I didn't complain. At least, not at first. Then one Friday evening, Anthony told me that an old friend of his, Eric, would be staying with us for a few days. Eric was 25, single, confident, and someone Anthony had known since they were young. He wasn't family, despite the way Anthony sometimes referred to him as one of the boys. When Eric arrived, I immediately noticed how different the atmosphere felt. He was talkative. He asked questions. He actually listened when I answered. And when I laughed, he smiled as if he genuinely enjoyed hearing it. I hated how much I noticed. That first evening, the three of us had dinner together. Anthony spent most of the meal checking his phone. Eric noticed. "So this is what married life looks like," he joked. Anthony laughed. "Don't let her fool you. She's used to it." I smiled, but something inside me tightened. Eric looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Then he changed the subject. Later that night, Anthony told me he had to leave early the next morning for an important business meeting. "I'll probably be gone until tomorrow night," he said. I stared at him. "You just got home." "I know. It's important." I wanted to tell him that I was tired of always being second to everything else. Instead, I simply nodded. The next morning, Anthony left. And for the first time in years, I found myself alone in the house with another man, Eric. At breakfast, he noticed how quiet I was. "You okay?" "Just tired." He leaned back in his chair. Anthony doesn't realize how lucky he is. I looked up. "What do you mean?" "You." I laughed nervously. "Don't start. I'm serious." There was something in his voice that made the room suddenly feel smaller. I stood and started clearing the plates. Eric followed me into the kitchen. "Daisy." I stopped. "Yes." "When was the last time someone told you that you're beautiful?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't remember, and that silence told him everything. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. Sometimes words can cross a boundary long before hands do. That afternoon, I kept thinking about the conversation. I told myself it meant nothing. But then Eric came downstairs carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I made yours the way you like it." I looked at him. "How did you know?" "You told me yesterday." I smiled despite myself. Anthony had been married to me for years, and sometimes forgot things I had told him 10 times. Eric had remembered something I had mentioned once. That realization bothered me more than it should have. That evening, Anthony called. "Everything okay?" "Yes." "Eric behaving himself?" I glanced across the room. Eric was sitting quietly on the sofa. "He's fine." Anthony laughed. "Good. Keep him entertained. He's been stressed lately." I didn't know what to say. After the call ended, Eric looked at me. "He really doesn't see it, does he?" "See what?" "The way you've been feeling." I looked away. "Don't talk about my marriage." "I'm not judging your marriage." "Then what are you doing?" He paused. "Making sure you know that someone notices you." Those words stayed with me. Later that night, we sat in the living room with the lights low. No music, no television, just silence. Then Eric said something that changed the entire atmosphere. "If Anthony wasn't your husband, would you ever have looked at me differently?" My heart began pounding. "Don't ask me that." "Why?" "Because I don't want to know the answer." He looked at me for several seconds. Then he stood. "I'm sorry." He started walking away. And that was when I realized something painful. I didn't want him to leave. "Eric." He stopped. I closed my eyes. Stay. He turned around. Neither of us spoke. Nothing happened that night, but something had changed. The next morning, Anthony called again. He told me his meeting had been delayed. I might be gone another day. I felt a strange mixture of disappointment and relief. Then he said something I would remember for the rest of my life. Eric can stay with you. You two seem to get along. I stared at the wall. He had no idea what he was saying. Or perhaps he knew more than I thought. That evening, Eric and I had dinner together. There was no pretending anymore. We talked about my marriage, about loneliness, about the things people stop saying after years together. And eventually, I admitted something I had never said out loud. I don't feel wanted anymore. Eric's expression softened. You should. I looked at him. Maybe that's what scares me. What? Wanting to feel wanted. He didn't answer. And somehow that silence was more powerful than anything he could have said. The next day, Anthony finally came home. I expected guilt. I expected awkwardness. Instead, he walked through the door and kissed my forehead as if nothing had happened. Eric was sitting in the living room. The three of us exchanged polite smiles. But I knew something had changed. Not because I had betrayed Anthony. I hadn't. Not physically. But I had crossed another kind of line. I had discovered how lonely I had become. And once you see that truth, you can't unsee it. That night, after Eric left, Anthony noticed something was wrong. You've been distant. I looked at him. Have you noticed? He frowned. Notice what? That I'm unhappy. He didn't answer. For the first time in years, I didn't rescue him from the silence. I let him sit with it. Then I told him everything. Not every detail, but enough. I told him how invisible I had felt, how easily another person had noticed the things he had stopped seeing. And most importantly, I told him that I wasn't going to continue living that way. Anthony was devastated. But this time, I didn't comfort him before taking care of myself. Our marriage didn't end that night. It also didn't magically become perfect. We went through months of difficult conversations. Some days were better than others. Eventually, Anthony understood something he had ignored for years. Infidelity doesn't always begin with a kiss. Sometimes it begins when your spouse stops looking at you. Sometimes it begins with a conversation you desperately needed to have years earlier. And sometimes the person who wakes you up isn't the person you end up with. Eric had reminded me that I was still capable of feeling seen. But the real lesson wasn't about Eric. It was about me. I had spent years waiting for someone else to notice that I was disappearing inside my own marriage. That night taught me to notice myself first. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. The most dangerous moment in a marriage isn't always when someone cheats. Sometimes it's the moment one person finally realizes they're tired of feeling alone. If this story made you wonder what you would do in the same situation, tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional stories about love, betrayal, and unexpected choices, subscribe for the next story.